So you found yourself standing on this empty planet with a handful of other would-be colonists with nothing but a set of crude stone tools and a doomsday clock in the sky. Now what? Logging into an eco server for the first time can leave you wondering where to begin. While the game looks like Minecraft in terms of its voxel blocky nature, there's a lot of nuance that goes into how you play and where to build. Let's take a dive into what you need to know to get started. Check the video chapters below if you need to skip the boring stuff you already know. First off, everything you do from here on out will cost calories. In the bottom left corner of your screen, you'll see the food bar, and that will grow or shrink based on how full you are. You'll also notice that it shows as a pie chart representing nutrition. Skill points are earned in this game over time, and we're talking real life time, not game time. Now the base skill gain rate is really low, but there are multipliers you can get that really ramp this up. Food is half the equation for that multiplier. When choosing what to eat, the closer to a perfectly balanced nutritional diet you manage, the higher your multiplier. You will also receive a bonus for eating a variety of food, so try not to stick to eating just one thing. Additionally, your character is assigned random food preferences at the beginning of the game. The only way to know which foods you like is just to try them. You will get an extra bonus for eating foods you like, while eating foods you hate can actually result in a negative multiplier. And if you get into mid-game only to find that your character doesn't like bacon, well, I guess you'll have to decide at that point if there's any reason to keep playing. Occasionally your character will also get a food craving. Satisfying this craving will add an additional bonus to your multiplier. In the example, you can see that I was craving a fern campfire salad, and after satisfying that craving, I got an extra 10%. The last thing to mention about food is food tier. You'll notice that higher tier foods have a higher nutrition numbers per calorie. So the higher tier food you eat, the higher your multiplier will end up being. So while you can eat raw tomatoes for the entire playthrough, your skill point gain will be dramatically slower than other players. Everything in Eco is about production and logistics. So when it comes to moving goods around, storage is a major factor of the game, and you'll quickly realize that storage space is premium. You have your basic backpack that holds small items like food, seeds, or tools. There's a bar down here that shows how close to max weight you are, all pretty standard fare here. Where things really start to differ though is in the handling of bulk items like piles of stone or shoveled dirt. With these items you can only carry one type in your bulk item slot, and the number of those you can carry differs between items. Now bulk items like these have their own storage rules. They either have to be placed back into the world as a full block, or in the case of stone and lumber stacked in a world square, or put into a bulk item storage. And bulk storage is limited to stockpiles and vehicles like carts and trucks. There's no tucking away several tons of dirt and stone in a storage chest in this game. And while you can store small items in the stockpiles, each stack will make a crate that takes up a full world block in-game. Since storage chests hold far more and only take up 2 world blocks, it's a much more space-efficient solution. Save the stockpiles for the big stuff if you're short on space. And a quick note on storage quality of life. Holding shift when dragging an item between storages will drag all items of that type. Additionally, you can move items between storages within range of one another, so it's entirely possible to use a midpoint storage to move stuff between 2 boxes that were otherwise out of range. Most tools in the game are pretty standard. Axes for trees, pick for mining, shovel for digging, but there are a few special cases worth pointing out. The road tool allows you to stamp out dirt roads and paths, which provide a small boost to movement speed and prevent wild growths from spawning back on that block. Then the hammer gives you building options whenever you're holding a material that can be used for construction. And the machete lets you destroy plants without giving you items you have to dispose of. There are a few food items that are harvested with specific tools. Taro root and camas bulbs are harvested with the shovel, destroying the plant, while the sickle can be used to harvest wheat as well as plant fiber from grass and various other inedible plants. Now if you take nothing else from this guide, this is the part to take away. The tooltip system can be used to answer the majority of the questions you end up having in this game. In this example, I want to make some boiled rice. So as I mouse over the icon for boiled rice, I get a tooltip of information that includes the recipe. If I then mouse over the recipe for boiled rice, I get more information about how to make it, including the fact that it's crafted at a kitchen, it's made with 10 rice, so many calories of advanced cooking level 1. You can also see the number of people online that are able to craft this recipe. In this example, I want to find an advanced upgrade for my bakery oven. As I mouse over the advanced upgrade listed here, this is a tag that represents 4 different types of upgrades. So I'm going to specifically point at level 4 because I know our server has them. I get further information on the Advanced Upgrade 4, including where I can buy it at and for what price, and it shows us there's one available. If I click on this, it will then jump me to the map where I can see where I need to go to buy it. One last thing to note about tooltips is that anything that lands in chat that is actually the name of an item in game will get a tooltip. So you can just type in something you want to see, mouse over it, and see the tooltip right there. You can press Y to pull up the economy screen, and from here you can see everything available for trade on the server. This is essentially your Shop from Home button. By clicking the cog in the corner, I can now apply a filter. Here I'll choose the predefined housing tag and select all to see any and all trades relating to housing bonus items. In the bottom of the screen, you can also see your current balance of the server's designated currency. But for me, the income and expenses tab is blank. While it's a very roundabout way to find it, you can use the currency tab at the top, view a report of the currency you're using, and find your name in the list to view all the transactions that have been made to and from your account. Every profession has multiple crafting tables to create products from. These will usually be crafted and sold by someone of another profession, which will vary based on the table you're needing. If you're unsure where to get one, explore the tooltip section we previously mentioned to find out who makes them. Before we go into the recipes, let's take a quick look at upgrade modules. These are extremely important. Upgrade modules reduce the material cost and crafting time for every order processed while the module is installed. Material usage will recalculate if you pull a module out, so don't go thinking you can queue up a bunch of orders and then yoink it. Always have the highest tier module available before starting expensive crafts. Back on the main screen, you'll see the output product on the left and material costs on the right. Materials surrounded by a green box will get the cost reduction from the upgrade module we just discussed. But some things have a fixed cost and show up yellow. For those items, you don't get a material discount. This exists because some things just can't be made more efficient, like putting fewer wheels on a vehicle. But you will get a material discount on crafting the wheels themselves. Your discount will be rounded off, so for some crafts it can be better to queue up many to take advantage of the discount. In this example, I'm getting triple the meat output for the same cost. Simply by adding to the queue, the material cost stays the same. When queuing up an order that has a few different possible outputs, you can specify what you want. For example, I can turn any logs into basic hewn logs, but only softwood or hardwood can be made into their respective log type. By default, they will make their specialized versions if you just queue up an order and set it to go. So if you have a preference, click the cog after you've chosen your quantity and then select your preference. And lastly, don't forget to organize the storage tab on your workbench. Check the box next to any storage that you want this bench to have access to. It will pull required resources from any linked storage and place finished goods in linked storage as well. You can change access priority by dragging the title section of each storage. If this work table makes both small and large items, it's a good idea to put a chest at the top of the list so the table will try to prioritize placing finished goods in the small box first. Claiming land protects your builds and limits other players from interacting with your stuff. Placing your starter tent will give you an initial claim, and all other claims will be made by using the land claim stake and right-clicking on a plot. You can also left-click to unclaim the plot. When you are on a claimed plot of land, information about it will appear in the bottom right corner. You can click your plot title here to make modifications like changing your color on the map, renaming the land after your business, provide access to other players, or even transfer ownership of the claim. Every time you read a new skill scroll and unlock access to a new skill, you'll receive 5 more land claim papers. Each paper is good for claiming a single 5x5 plot of land. Trading these can be profitable as some professions like farmers need a lot of land, whereas a cook may only need enough space for a house and a shop. There's a balance to strike when it comes to claiming land. On one hand, you want to leave room between players to allow them to scale up, but at the same time, having market districts where buyers can shop multiple stores at once can increase traffic. A general rule is that you can build close together in a city center or near other professions that are primarily shopkeepers. But if your neighbor is a logger planning to grow a big tree farm, then it's nice to leave them space to expand their fields as they get more land papers. You also need to consider your profession. If you're going into heavy smelting, you don't want to claim land right next to a wheat farm, as the pollution from your operation will damage your neighbor's crop output. When it comes to building an eco, you're going to need structures to house your workspace and rooms for your personal home. The home is the other half of the skill bonus multiplier we discussed in the food section. Much like the food, the fancier the house, the higher the bonus. You're going to increase this score through nicer building materials and nicer furniture. With your hammer equipped, your material hologram will change from a placed item into a constructed one. You can then right-click to build a block, or left-click to pick it back up. Holding F will allow you to change the form of the block you're building, and also allow you to choose between options that allow placement of multiple blocks at a time. As you get better building materials to work with, you'll see more and more options for forms in this menu, going from simple log huts to grandiose structures. Your house gets a pie chart similar to the food one, only this one is separated into room types, where you get bonuses for building and furnishing a common room, a bedroom, a bathroom, and a kitchen, with specific furniture items dictating what type of room it is. Each room will have a soft cap that limits your bonus multiplier by the tier of building materials used to construct it. In the video, you can see that I have much nicer furniture than my building materials account for, causing the soft cap to go into effect. There are 4 tiers of building materials you can advance through in the game, coming from wood, stone, and eventually even concrete and metal. Your workshop is a similar story. Higher tier work tables have a higher tier requirement for building materials, so a tier 2 baker's oven will need to be in a room built mostly of tier 2 materials like brick. Each table also has a space requirement. If your room has an interior space of 4x4 and 3 tiles tall, then you end up with a 48 cubic meter space. If your table consumes all 48, then placing another table in that room will shut down all of them. You can see here in the status tab how much space the room has, how much of that space is consumed by this table, and how much of that space is consumed by all tables in the room. Some professions like engineering can end up with a lot of work table space requirements, so leave yourself room to scale up operations or at least plan to build extra floors on your building. Many tables require power to function. Some burn materials directly like coal for a kiln, while others require remote power divided between mechanical power, which is provided by windmills and water wheels, and electrical power provided by fuel generators. Windmills need to be placed in open air and benefit from clear area in front of them, while water wheels need to be in a running water source like a river. For both types of power, there is an invisible power grid that automatically links together things that are in range of one another, creating a kind of daisy chain effect. In the example you see, the final Arastra is out of range of the windmill, but because of the connections between the other ones, it is powered. Now this power grid is public. There's currently no way to limit access to that power, so if you're running a private generator and the community puts up power poles on your street, your generator will now be contributing to the power demand on that grid. For this reason, power generation is a good candidate for government programs. The final thing to consider when building is roads. As the server grows and commerce ramps up, the need to transport materials in bulk will grow, and larger vehicles will start needing even more space. You should keep an eye out from the very beginning on where trade routes are likely to form and how people will need to get to and even through your property. You should assume that roads will follow land claim plots, at a minimum of 1 plot wide for basic roads and 2 to 3 plots wide for major highways. Planning out your road areas to follow these land claims makes it far easier for the government to district those roads, which can then be used to protect the roads or issue laws to pay anyone who builds on them. Failing to plan for this can make roads a nightmare to navigate once trucks start rolling off the line. It's also important to note that ramps only rise or drop 1 tile vertically for every 4 tiles horizontal. So if you're building on a hilltop that is only 10 tiles above the average road height, it's going to take up to 40 tiles to ramp all the way up or down to that hill. I recommend planning out these ramps and building at least the dirt versions early on. Now to discuss my favorite part of Eco, running a store. Because everything in Eco is player-made, the storefront is critical to trading goods between players, especially when everyone has different playtimes. When setting up your shop, make sure it's accessible by anyone coming onto your property, and don't forget to set the currency your store is trading in. They always default to personal credit. In the early game, before currency is formed, everyone has to trade in credit, so it's important to offer purchase options for other players to sell you, or they won't be able to get your credit to buy with. This is basically just a barter system until money is available. You also want to review the storage tab and connect any storage you would like to store purchases to be placed in. Just like the crafting tables, the store will try to place items in the order they're listed here, so if you have a storage preference, change the order in this menu. One major flaw in Eco is that stores will not tell sellers that it can't buy anymore because your storage is full. There's very few things more frustrating than hauling a full cart of goods across the map only to hit a store that says it wants the goods but can't buy them. So it's recommended to make sure your storage space matches the buy quantities you defined in your store. When setting the price on items, you want to look through your materials cost based on market value. In this example, I want to make a huckleberry pie. I see that it costs 3 flour, 6 huckleberries, and 2 units of fat. I'm going to place an order of 10 to get a better idea of the discount my module is offering. So now it's more like 2.2 flour, 5.5 berries, and 1.1 units of fat. Now let's use our tooltips to check costs on the market. It looks like flour is about 0.2. The berries have a few prices, but there's plenty at 0.05, so we'll use that one. And I have 2 choices for a fat source, but I know tallow is currently cheaper on our server and can be found for 0.2. This gives me a base cost of around 94 cents to make the pie. I currently have the pie priced at 2. While that is 100% markup, this is a high calorie food and players don't need to eat very many of them. On top of that, there's a lot of currency on the server, so 2 is not a lot of money in this economy. For a lower end food with half those calories, I might run a smaller margin and sell more of them. You also want to check what other players are selling the same item for. No matter how reasonable your markup is, players will shop the cheapest price. And it's also important to avoid price gouging. These servers are small and people will remember. I had a run where a player raised his road prices in the middle of me filling a government contract to build a road, essentially stealing half my profits for the project. From that point on, I drove half a map further to buy from his competition. When deciding your margin, you need to understand the product. When dealing with food and building materials, you'll be selling in large volumes, so you can have a lower margin. But things like furniture will stop selling once players have what they need, so the markup should be higher. Take trucks for example. Every player only needs one. So while you may make a lot of money on the sale, once every player has one, those sales grind to a halt. All new skills in the game are unlocked through research. Everything you need is done at this one table, with each research having its own recipe of papers that have to be contributed to completion. Once a research is completed, you will get a book for that research. You can then use that book to create an unlimited number of skill scrolls, which are usually sold to other players so they can learn the skill as well. Each book requires papers from various other professions, forcing this to be a collaborative effort. The labor required from the book will also come from a skill in the same tree. For example, milling research requires farming labor. The primary way to set up a research is to create a work party. To do this, you'll need to access a bulletin board. From here, you want to set up a work party. Now, the rest of this can be a bit complicated, so we'll go through it. At the top, you can see all the people who've contributed to the work party and what their percentage is. In the work section, you can see all the work jobs near the contract board that were pulled in. Take special note to remove anything not related to the research. So now we have the papers for the research as well as the research labor itself. There's a weighting section to the right, and here you're going to define how much weight that contribution line counts toward the whole project. So if we set the labor to a weight of 1 and the papers to 9, then the labor will be 10% of the overall project contribution and the papers will be 90%. At the bottom, we can offer payment for helping with the project. First off, anyone helping will automatically learn the new skill if their contribution meets the threshold. This is where setting the weight is important. If you set the contribution threshold here to the default of 10, while the labor counts for half the whole project, anyone contributing papers would then have to contribute at least 1/5 of the remaining papers to hit that 10% contribution. It's generally better to lower this value. You can also pay out money to all contributors. Whatever money you put in the pool will be divided among the contributors based on percentage. It's a good idea to offer up money for this, since their contribution will usually end up costing them more than buying the paper from you later would have cost, in addition to the fact that you'll be able to sell the papers and recoup this cost. A quick quality of life tip: you can view all active work parties from the economy screen without going to the individual contract boards. From here you can see who is participating already, and in order to tell which components are still needed, mouse over the project itself. While this particular one isn't a research book, the information will be similar. We've talked about the economy of eco, but the other half of the game's namesake is the ecosystem. The wheels of progress have a cost. Many operations in the game create pollution. Chopping trees leaves stumps and debris that will prevent the area from regrowing if they aren't cleaned up. Tailings from smelting operations seep pollution into the area around them, and the further underground they're stored, the more that pollution is reduced. Power generators and refineries output polluted water that quickly pollutes the ground around them, while their smokestacks create air pollution that slowly seeps into the ground. If placed properly, these pollution sources can limit damage. Ground pollution in the desert isn't going to be killing anyone's crops, but oil refineries next to a farm will quickly start reducing outputs for a farmer or outright kill their plants. Water pollution in a major river will quickly destroy fish life, affecting fishermen who might have traps in that river. It's important to collaborate and be respectful in this game. Don't set up an oil refinery on top of a farm, unless there is just absolutely no other oil available. And finally, let's discuss global pollution stats. From any device that generates pollution, you can view the stats from the status page. Here you can see the small amount my vehicle produces, but you can also see how much CO2 is being produced or removed from the planet per day, and how much CO2 buildup is already present. And in the bottom section is a warning for how much has to happen before temperatures rise or sea level change occurs. In the example, you can see that we've built up 327 parts per million of CO2, and at 340, temperatures will begin to rise. But in the middle, you can also see that plant life is currently bringing that number back down. It is a slow part of the day though, so production is quiet right now. Once a sea level change occurs, it's permanent and can flood out anyone who is built on the waterfront. Government in this game is a complex beast, so we'll briefly touch on each station and what it does. At some point, your server will need to build a structure to house the government furniture pieces. The first one is the Capitol. This acts as a crafting table for all the other government tables, and this is where you'll draft your basic constitution. The Constitution will decide who is allowed to do what in terms of government activities, who can propose laws, vote on them, and who can execute things by executive action without a vote. If for any reason you want to add more than one rule to a category of the Constitution, you'll need an amendment table for that. Using the Board of Elections, you can set the rules for how an election is run, anything from who's allowed to vote, how long elections last, and even what % is needed to end one early. The court structure allows you to create the actual laws themselves. For example, you could create a law that taxes anyone who chops down a tree, or pay anyone who adds roadblocks to a road district. The complexity of the laws can get pretty deep here. The zoning office allows you to define map districts like roads, nature preserves, or protected farmlands. You can then use those zones to pass laws that only apply to that zone. The demographics office is much the same, only you're creating titles for groups of people. A common example is creating a demographic that marks players inactive if they haven't logged in for a while, then adding a law that gives someone executive privilege to seize these accounts and lands, but only once they fall into that category. The executive office is where anyone who has the executive action privilege can perform those actions. The government office desk is where you can create titles like treasurer, council members, etc. And the registrar's office allows anyone to create new titles that aren't necessarily tied to a government position. This is a much more open-ended feature. For example, you could create a manager title for your company, pay them a wage from your personal account, and then grant that title access to your property. The ballot box is where anyone can go to vote on an election or enter themselves into an open election. You can also vote directly from the notification icon active on your screen whenever open elections are present. The Treasury is where the official with treasurer authority will define all tax rates on the server. And lastly, the Mint is where you create currency. Typically, the treasurer fulfills this role. The currency can be backed by a specific product. For example, a coal-backed currency would be intended to guarantee that the currency is always worth a piece of coal, requiring it to be used in the creation of that new currency. If you want a currency backed by faith alone, many will just use plant fibers as the backing. A well-run government can do a lot to provide incentives for road building, pass laws to prevent hunting endangered animals, or even large building contracts to keep the economy moving during more stale portions of the game. I would recommend avoiding government involvement on your first run. Just like real politics, no two people ever agree on how to tackle a problem, and it can get a bit dramatic listening to people overreact to basic policy changes like taxes. That being said, the fact that this game even offers that kind of debate is pretty unique, and watching the creative ways people find to perform tax evasion is nothing short of amusing. Okay, you understand how the game mechanics work, but how do you pick a profession? You can use the tooltips we discussed earlier on the profession tags to see who all has taken a profession. I personally like to use the map though and see where everyone is at. There may be too many carpenters playing, but if you see a congregation of people or a town without one nearby, there may be an opportunity to take this profession anyway. I'm going to do a brief overview of each profession tree, but each of them is complex enough to deserve their own video, so we'll keep it pretty high level. The carpentry profession revolves around the chopping of trees and creation of lumber-related items. This profession will make all wooden building materials, many of the crafting tables used by other professions, and a sizable array of furniture items for player homes. Carpentry eventually upgrades into the composites profession later in the game, which will use plastics and epoxy from the oil profession to make Tier 4 lumber. This profession can get complex as each type of wood on the map can make a different type of building material, which will have its own color and appearance. This generates a lot of trading opportunity with other regions of the map in order to source the wood types that your buyers are looking for. Carpentry is also home to the paper milling skill, which has been abandoned for a very long time and for some odd reason is still in the game. As of this video, the profession only produces paper, and that is only used in the creation of a bookshelf furniture item. Ignore paper milling unless you really want to corner the market on bookshelves. To be fair, I really like the bookshelves. You'll want to take the carpentry tree if you like working with bulk sales of building materials and the production of furniture. Logging is a fair bit of manual labor and logistics, but you can always set up buy orders for logs rather than chopping them yourself. The chef provides all the fuel that keeps the gears of industry running. Every bit of labor performed by any player burns calories, which can only be refilled by eating foods. As a chef, you will be doing very little field work in the game. In the beginning, you may be gathering your own ingredients, but as the game progresses, you will need materials in bulk and will quickly rely on farmers to provide that. Your playtime will be focused around running a storefront and selling items in bulk. You will need to keep a wide assortment of balanced nutrition foods of varying quality levels in stock and ready to sell. Take this profession if you like running a storefront and want to provide consumable goods that stay in demand for the entire playthrough. Engineering is the profession that provides all the logistics and advanced components of an eco world. This tree is pretty diverse and easily the most complicated on the list. Unlike other skill trees, the complexity of this one will likely force you to specialize later in the game. You will be able to choose to go down the route of electronics, creating electrical lighting, modern production tables, green energy devices, or mechanics, which will allow you to produce the game's first powered vehicles and earliest power-producing generators. The industry path is the natural evolution of mechanics and will find you producing heavy logistics equipment like the crane, excavator, and the extremely important truck, which ends up being the highest tier personal vehicle in the game. And finally, the last focus of engineering is the oil drilling profession, where you can begin the gold rush of securing the production hotspots and producing fuel and advanced components for the final tiers of manufacturing. Go into the engineering tree if you enjoy complex recipes and building large industrial structures, as these machines are big and have a larger building footprint than most. These professions also require the most capital to dive into, as they hold many very expensive recipes, but also sell for a very high price. Farming is the profession that ends society's need to wander the hills foraging for free tomatoes. This profession can be a little tricky because the mechanics of it are far less obvious than many other professions. But I've done a detailed guide on farming in another video you can check out if you're interested in learning more. The farmer is going to need a lot of land claim papers to grab enough space to farm large fields of crops. And you'll either have to specialize in what you plan to grow or run farms in different parts of the map, as crop fertility is very weather and region specific. Unlike other skills, the farmer can't really grind beyond the growth capacity of the crops. Once you harvest and replant a field, you'll be waiting a full real-life day before those crops are ready to harvest. If you really want to play more, you can mine or lumberjack on the side or pick up building contracts and road work. This profession runs the risk of becoming stale if there are too many farmers making too many products. But since your products are a part of a permanent consumption routine, they're always in demand. Take this profession if you enjoy providing bulk consumable products or prefer to have a burst window of production once per real-life day. Hunting is the meat production chain of the game. This profession will hunt down wild animals and provide the products to the cooks. It also includes fishing and some furniture items through taxidermy. There's not a lot to say for this one. It's a simple profession and only has 2 skill trees, leaving you open to explore other portions of trees as well. This profession is fully capable of hunting animals to extinction, so be sure to check those animal population numbers and hunt responsibly. Take this profession if you enjoy roaming the map and providing population control to those pesky animals that keep knocking you off the bridge while you're walking. The mason is the stoneworking equivalent of the carpenter. Most building materials in the game come from wood or stone, and the mason provides the latter. At lower levels, you'll be providing basic building materials, crafting tables, and decorative statues. At higher levels, you can specialize into glassworking for nice windows, pottery for brick, and finally advanced masonry to produce high-end ashlar stone buildings. The introduction of ashlar stone at this point of the playthrough begins really opening up the door for creative constructions. Much like the carpenter, take this profession if you like producing bulk building materials and furniture pieces. The smith provides the all-important metal bars that so many other professions need to produce the fun items of the game. The smith is also responsible for producing better tools that eliminate those wimpy stone tools from your inventory. They will also be the most efficient way to have those worn-out tools repaired. This profession eventually upgrades into advanced smelting, which provides even higher quality tools and opens the door for metal building materials instead of wood and stone. The smithing tree is only 2 skills, but is usually taken with the mining skill from the mason tree, providing a rounded out experience. Take this profession if you enjoy metalworking and spending a lot of time underground mining out metals. Be prepared to deal with a lot of solid pollution waste and possibly competition, as this one can be a pretty popular choice. Survivalist is a generic skill everyone gets, and as you level up, it reduces your calorie consumption and gives you more carry weight and a bigger stomach. And finally, the tailoring profession. This profession has only 1 skill and is ideally paired with something else. The tailor will produce clothing and backpacks that improve the work efficiency of the wearer. They also produce shoes that can improve move speed, and many furniture items to increase housing quality. The biggest challenge the tailor faces is that while all their items are highly valuable, they are only ever needed once by any player. So once you've outfitted everyone on the server and they have enough rugs for their houses, there's not a lot of repeat business. You can take this profession because not a lot of people will, and you can get some really good sales of highly needed items. It can also be paired well with carpentry if you want to have a store and showroom focused on furniture. Holy cow, okay, I'm done. If you made it this far, kudos. I believe guides should be short and to the point, but that was a lot of information to cover. Anyway, good luck on your run, and remember, it's a community game, so be kind to your neighbors.